Perfect. So, first I'd like to thank Jessica and, let's see, how do I get rid of this whole thing here? I don't know. I'd like to thank Jessica and Bob for inviting me to talk about ASTM. Normally when we do a ASTM presentation, we're specifically talking about E53 and the standards within E53 and what the E53 role is. Today I wanted to take a look at the big picture, so to speak, provide an answer of what is ASTM, how MPMA and E53 Committee on Asset Management fit into the world of voluntary consensus standards, why you should be involved, hopefully the relationship envisioned for E53 and the ISO 55000 series, and the benefits of membership. All right, there we go. Okay, ASTM, sort of the big picture, so to speak. Recently, ASTM is going through a rebranding mode. They've updated their logo, which you see up there in the right-hand corner, which is more globe-like, encircling the globe. And they've come up with this wonderful tagline called "Helping Our World Work Better." I think that pretty much is a great tagline for this organization. They have over 12,000 standards in place being used globally. These standards are applied to everything from steel to sustainability to leisure to football helmets to riding boots to food safety to all kinds of industries. And they actually improve our lives and the lives of millions of people every day. You may not know it, but probably many of the items you use, many of the items that you buy, their industries use ASTM standards behind the production of those items. ASTM collaborates with businesses, governments, and experts worldwide to create standards that combine market relevance and technical qualities. These standards harness their members' expertise and commitment, bringing together their good science, good engineering, and good judgment. In E53, our members certainly bring the expertise and commitment in developing asset management standards that help our organizations work appropriately, efficiently, and profitability. The ASTM standards influence entire industries and encourage growth in established and emerging economics. They also reflect ASTM's belief in relevance, effectiveness, and speed in a world where the pace of change never slows. And you can see here that 90% of the industry sectors are represented through ASTM standards. And as I go through this, you're going to hear a lot of the global part of ASTM. We may look at ASTM just sort of on the U.S. side of things through MPMA, but you'll see as I go through this how far-reaching it truly is. The role of ASTM standards, building on the work of the founders in the early rail industry, ASTM standards ensure safety, quality, and reliability. ASTM was founded over 117 years ago by the Pennsylvania Railroad in order to establish consistency in the building of rail irons, the rail tracks that were being produced by the steel industry in Pennsylvania. So they got all these steel people together, these industries, and said, okay, we need to come up with some form that everyone is using because your company's steel rails are breaking, your company's steel rails are doing great, and we need to be consistent in laying tracks across the United States. So that was the birth of basically ASTM. The first standard was in the rail industry. They are consistently responding to new challenges, new technology, and new markets by developing new standards and enhancing established ones. ASTM bases its rigorous development process on voluntary consensus. This gives everyone an opportunity to participate in creating and defining a standard. It also ensures that these standards are effective and relevant across the diverse markets they serve, and one of those markets is asset management. The standards help everyone, consumers, businesses, manufacturers, innovators, and governments. They underpin contracts, laws, and regulations. They support established and emerging economies and ultimately free and fair global trade. If you were to go to Lowe's or Home Depot, I won't play a favorite here, and you have to run some conduit and you need some white PVC piping, on that PVC piping you'll see an ASTM standard stamp there, so that anyone who makes PVC piping has to follow that ASTM standard. If you want to buy steel-toed boots, if you are lucky enough to still have a Sears in your area and you get an ad, look at the ad next time they advertise boots. You'll see ASTM standards in their advertisements. Pick up a box of Crayola crayons. You'll see ASTM standards stopped on that box of Crayola crayons. So truly, these standards are used everywhere and by everyone, and probably in more places than you realize. How does ASTM work? The principle that makes ASTM standards accepted and trusted worldwide is openness. And I cannot stress that enough, and if you talk to anyone at ASTM, openness is the key word. They bring together experts, individuals, organizations, academia, governments, trade organizations, consultants, and consumers from all over the world. There are over 30,000 members from 148 countries that subscribe to ASTM. Within E53, we have members from China, Iraq, France, and far-off places like Canada. And we welcome their input. Exchanging expertise and knowledge, they participate in a transparent process that is open to anyone, anywhere, with an interest in the standards development and use. This means that, as well as being timely and relevant, an ASTM standard is fully representative of the sectors to which it applies. The standards are an aid to innovation, not a hurdle to overcome. And that's an important thing to remember. The standards are there to help, not to hinder. So we don't want anyone to be afraid of using the standards. We don't want people to, we don't want to write a standard within E53 that is cumbersome and becomes a burden. We subscribe to this aid and innovation process within ASTM for E53. You'll see that there are 145 main committees. E53 is a main committee with close to 2,000 subcommittees under those main committees. We have 8 subcommittees under E53. ASTM is one of the world's largest standard development organizations, but it's the scale of the involvement and influence that counts more. Compliance with the 6 World Trade Organization's principles for international standards of development, which are transparency, openness, consensus, relevance, coherence, and development dimension. They work across political, cultural, and geographical borders, recognizing expertise, not country of origin. This promotes a massive range of activity and phenomenal exchange of knowledge. Trusted and known for market relevance and technical quality, the standards are the choice for many global industries. Over 50% of industries outside the United States use ASTM standards. They also believe in the power of standards to inspire and enable people and economies. Their global outreach activities increase understanding about standards and their application, and their Memorandum of Understanding programs provide tangible encouragement to developing economies. It says here they have 90 Memorandums of Understandings with countries outside of the United States. If you're a member of E53, you're probably getting the Standardization magazine. If you look in that magazine, every single month there are pictures and groups of people from Asia, Europe, the Middle East, from all over the world that are coming to the ASTM headquarters in Pennsylvania for training, for introduction to standards, just to meet the people at headquarters because they are bringing these standards to their country. It always amazes me to see where these people are coming from all the way to Pennsylvania just to learn about standards. It is so important to them and it should be very important to us. It's vital that ASTM stay relevant. and fully aligned to user needs. All standards are reviewed every 5 years, but in fast-moving sectors, it's more frequent than that. They also work hard to consistently improve their own working methods. The ASTM standards development process is flexible, transparent, and built on consensus. It's backed by powerful tools and technologies that enhance global connectivity. These systems give members the freedom to be in instant contact, to share thinking, and to review and develop standards more quickly. This reinforces the reputation for timely as well as relevant standards. Again, if you've been part of E53, you'll know that last year we had a big year for our 5-year review of standards. I think we had close to 8 standards that fell into this 5-year review period. So once a standard is written, it's not static. It can be changed months after it's written if we feel it has to be. But at the 5-year cycle, we have to do a review, and that may mean that we have to revise, and then we have to ballot that revision. So it's sort of a living organism, so to speak. What we wrote in the beginning when we became a committee may not be valid now. And it could be that some standards have to be withdrawn due to the fact they're just not valid anymore. We actually withdrew one standard last year. So they are constantly in motion. We're constantly looking at them. We're constantly open to ideas or revising or making current standards better and developing new standards. So really, why do we even care? What drives the use of standards? Why do we become part of ASTM? Why do we modify our procedures to include them? Well, the federal government, on the federal government side, they've been no stranger to the use of voluntary consensus standards. Public Law 104-113, the National Technology Transfer and Advancement Act of 1995, and the Office of Management and Budget Circular A119 provide direction for the federal government. Most of us are probably familiar with the Circular A119, and what's great about that is it actually has must statements within that circular. All federal agencies must use voluntary consensus standards in lieu of government unique standards. So if a VCS is out there and it's not inconsistent with law or otherwise impractical for use, the federal government and agencies within it should be using it. They shouldn't be developing their own government unique standards in place of a voluntary consensus standard. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. If they want to develop government unique standards, the agency must submit a report describing the reasons for its use in lieu of voluntary consensus standards to the Office of Management and Budget through the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So you can do it, but the government has a process that you have to follow in order to say why you're doing it. My guess is, if you don't have to go through a process, why bother? But I'm sure there are times that unique standards are needed, but there's so many voluntary consensus standards out there, they probably cover up most everything. And the circular also directs a must statement, agencies to consult with voluntary consensus standards bodies, both domestic and international, and participate in such bodies in the development of voluntary consensus standards where, you can see the rest, it's public interest and compatible with their mission stories and budget resources. So this one document provides direction, must-type direction for the use of standards, and must-type direction for participating within a voluntary consensus standard body. Of course, ASTM is a voluntary consensus standard body, and though we have federal government people within E53, we could certainly use a few more from other agencies, to help us out when we're developing standards. Industry side, contractors, let's face it, probably weren't too interested in this as having to do it until the Federal Acquisition Regulation FAR was rewritten in 2007, and the government clause said that that contractors shall Okay? Shall use voluntary consensus standards in their property management systems. And then once we had that shall statement, everybody wanted to get involved. We were pumping out standards quickly so we could be compliant with FAR. And that's really was the starting point of getting everyone wrapped up in E53 and NPMA involved when that government property clause was rewritten. In 2012, that changed a bit where it says the contractor may employ customary commercial practices, voluntary consensus standards, or industry leading practices. So the shall statement went to a may statement. And so even though it gives you the option now, I still believe truly that standards are an important part of a contractor's policies and procedures as far as asset management. And again, you'll see the second one here. If nothing else, it makes good business practice to have something behind your policies and procedures that says, this is why we do it. This is our backup to doing it this way. This is how everyone else does it. It's a standard out there, and you could lay that standard down in front of somebody and say, this is why. So it gives you good backup to what you're doing. And truthfully, if you read the standards under E53, you're probably going to find out it's really reinforcing what you've been doing for years within your policies and procedures. The people who are developing these standards are mostly government contractors with, of course, input from the government side. And we're just putting down on paper and making things official for what we've already been doing. And we continue to do that. So if you haven't looked at the standards, if you haven't become a member, you may want to consider doing that. But don't be afraid to look at them. Don't be afraid to use them. Their adoption is growing. And so we will do anything on our committee to help you if you need help in putting standards in place. So currently, ASTM has standards in these 23 different industries. And as you can see, when ASTM goes out and they do a presentation, asset management is up there on the top. So it's a good thing we're not called property management anymore because we'd be down here near the bottom. So that's another plus in changing our name to asset management. But as you can see, they're involved in everything. They're involved in food processing, metals, oil and gas, plastics, sports and leisure, which I always found to be fascinating. Because when you're watching a football game, those football helmets are meeting ASTM standards. So ASTM is just hooked into everything. All kinds of manufacturing, all kinds of safety. For ours, asset management, of course, is for policies and processing, which is a little bit different take on from what ASTM is used to doing. But we are glad that they accepted our idea and that we've become part of their group. So how does ASTM and NPMA work together? If you've been around as long as I have, it was back in 1998 that the idea of standards took hold at the NES, the National Education Seminar, held in Santa Fe. Okay? It was at that time that the board stood up and said, okay, we need a common language. We need to figure out what we can do. Too many of us are doing the same thing too many different ways. Our auditors are auditing us too many different ways, and we just need some common ground. So a group of people got together to come up with ideas of how we could find this common ground and pull all of us together and become a stronger organization as far as processes and policies. They went to different voluntary consensus standards bodies to see who would sort of take us in, so to speak. ASTM was intrigued by the idea of property management standards, as it was called back then. Because ASTM normally is, again, in manufacturing, safety, true hard processes that can be tested, that can be validated, that they provide training for, that they provide certification for. They once have the standard, they help industries implement those standards. But in our case, they weren't quite sure how to certify someone who's using the standard for receiving, or how do you take that standard to one of their many labs and test it to make sure everyone's consistent with it and it meets all the requirements of the standards. So this is where NPMA came in and said, okay, we understand that, so let us develop and do the educational content. Let us include certification chapters in our certifications, or CPPA, ASTM, and we will promote these standards. So this is how, and this is why I call it as a partnership between ASTM and NPMA, and how the two are tied to each other since 2000. So basically, our committee is 15 years old. You know, the first standards were issued in 2001, the first group of 10, for those who've been here as long, you remember that. And since then, we've managed to put in place 27 standards, 27 active standards. So we've done well by ASTM, how the ASTM process works. Many existing committees who've been around longer than us don't have 27 standards on the table. And whenever we talk to those folks at ASTM, there's still some of them there who say, well, how did you get with us? How are you part of us? But they're very happy that we are. This is how the two groups work together. Under ASTM E53, we develop. Under NPMA, they educate. So the ISO 55000 series of standards was published in 2014. Okay? And of course, this came out of a standard that was over in England. Someone took it to ISO and said, we want to make an ISO asset management standard. We heard about it. Many important people within E53 decided it was a very good idea to become involved in this ISO process. And so the Technical Advisory Group for the United States of America, through ANSI, was put together and administratively managed by ASTM under E53. This was a way to get the U.S. input into what was going to become an international standard through ISO. It took them a long time. It took them many hours. I think there was close to 40 countries involved. But in 2014, the ISO 55 series was published. And the series is truly 3 standards. We always just talk about ISO 55000, but it's really ISO 55000, 55001, and 55002. So it's 3 standards that make up the series. An ISO 55000 provides an overview of asset management, its principles, terminology, and the expected benefits from adopting asset management. 55001 specifies the requirements for an asset management system within the context of the organization and can be applied to all types of assets by all types and sizes of organizations. And 55002 provides guidance for the application of asset management systems in accordance with the requirements of 5001. What these 5000 series are, they're very high level. They're strategic standards. As you can see here, if you talk to people, they describe the what must be done, not the specifics on how to get there. And what ASTM E53 standards are, we provide the how. We provide the how to get there. That is our goal. You should be able to take an E53 standard up off the shelf, look at it, and say, how do I can fit this into my process, this is all I need to do, or this is what I want my process to be, and change your process. So what we hope and what we envision as the ISO 55 series matures and becomes more adopted through organizations throughout the U.S. and hopefully globally, is that to be compliant with the 55 series, we want people to look at the E53 standards and put them into their processes and policies so that they can become compliant easier with ISO 55000. So there's a relationship there. There's no battle. Some people, for some reason, believe that there was a battle in the beginning between the two groups. There's no battle. Again, it's a working relationship. E53 had many people involved from the very beginning. They put together one heck of a good standard in ISO 55000 series. And so it's very, very useful. It's very, very useful to high management. And then our standards can support that if you want to incorporate and become compliant with ISO 55000. So as I stated before, ASTM has over 30,000 global members in 148 countries. Anyone who wants to utilize their expertise to influence standards is welcome to join ASTM. You know, Jim Dieter in the very beginning said, you know, if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it for us. So that's why you'll find out that of the membership within E53, the majority are NPMA members. Though that is slowly changing and the percentages are not quite equal, but they're getting closer to equal of people who are not NPMA members to those who are, the truth is still out there that if you don't join, if we don't write it, someone else is going to do it. Okay? There are three types of memberships: participating membership, organizational membership, and student membership. Participating members actively develop new standards and revise existing ones in a uniquely open environment. There's that word open again. They can also form invaluable relationships, exchange ideas, and access professional development opportunities, which I think that is true, especially in my case. And organizational members help to shape standards and get privileged access to information that directly affect their businesses. Membership through organizations also support growth, international trade, and employment development. And student memberships are free and open to all undergraduates. It provides a thorough understanding of the standardization process and how it applies to the workforce. ASTM is big on student development. They have lots of students in many of their other main committees. We do not have any. That doesn't mean we cannot. So if you're connected to students who are interested in asset management, please contact me and we can work out a free membership for them and get them participating in the process. And this is my cheerleading slide of reasons to join ASTM E53. We have 151 of those 30,000 members in E53. And as I stated before, we are global. We have members from 4 countries participating on the committee. So we are truly an ASTM international committee. I've listed here the top 10 reasons to join. You know, obviously influencing standards that impact your industry. Again, if you're not on the committee doing it, someone else is going to, and you may have the greatest idea that we've never heard from. Okay, so if you are considering joining, just join for 1 year and see how it goes. If you've just been thinking about it, it's a fun process to be in. You get to collaborate. Okay, we're always looking for technical teams to start up new standards. You don't have to be physically connected anymore. We can always connect through the internet, through email. ASTM has many, many tools for task groups to work together in developing standards. So the physical part of having to be in contact and eye-to-eye no longer exists. We can pull teams together from anywhere. Credibility for business transactions, interactions, again, if you can incorporate these standards into your processes, you have something behind you that says, this is why I do it. And you don't have to justify that we do it this way just because we've always done it this way, and no, I have no idea why it's done that way. Connect with customers and clients. I can guarantee you that some of your clients, some of your customers are members of E53. Guarantee it. Increase your company's visibility. That's an obvious one. We have your name will pop up as our membership, and so it's good to know that your company's actively involved in the voluntary consistent standard process. Networking with your peers, another given. Advance your career. It's always good to put on your resume that you're a member of E53, or you're involved at least in the process of creating standards that others will follow. That's a good way to put it. Access leadership opportunities. And this is truly true. I mean, I did not become a member of E53 until 2007. And again, it was because rewrite of the government property clause. I had that shall statement, and I thought, gosh darn it, I better figure out what this is all about. I knew E53 had been around. I had the nice little booklet of the first 10 standards that NPMA published and sold, but I never was involved. And then Lyle Hesmer and Jim Dieterman put a class together. It was an involved class. It took over 4 weeks, ultimately, to complete. We received a certificate of sort of expertise in standards, and many of our class became leaders within NPMA. I started out as the secretary, and now I'm the chairman. Cinda Brockman is on there. She's vice chairman. Dave Barger is on there. So many of us from that 2007 class became involved because, one, we knew we needed to, and two, we realized that, again, we had a voice. This allowed us to have a voice for our industry. This allowed us to get our ideas down on paper, and this allowed us to just not sit in the background, so to speak, and wonder what could be, and wonder why someone isn't doing this, and wonder why someone's doing that. So we are a very active committee, and we're always looking for people to get involved. And if you are part of E53, which means you're part of ASTM, if you have others within your company that need access to an ASTM standard, through your membership, you can buy that standard at a discount, which isn't a small thing. It's always a positive thing. All right, the last word as we get near the end here. The work of standards affects the daily life of you and everyone else around you. The standards are global, practical, and relevant, making them the first choice for company, organizations, and governments around the world. In addition, the partnership with NPMA helps provide information and guidance in the use of the standards. And ultimately, and these are we are statements, so this is sort of an ASTM. I'm going to have my ASTM hat on here. You know, ASTM is ready to innovate. We value good sense. We value good judgment also. We're willing to share and be acceptable. We're committed to helping our world work better. And I will say that even though these are the general statements of ASTM, these are also the principles that we use within E53 in our main committee. We're certainly ready to innovate. We will give us a subject, we'll come up with a standard for it. We have an awful lot of good people on this committee. Good sense, good judgment, experience. They know how to write a standard, and they know what's needed out there. Willing to share and be accountable, that's part of the process of developing a standard. If you become a member of E53, or if you are a member of E53, you know for a fact that just because someone writes a standard, we put it out there, it certainly doesn't end up the way it's usually first written. The balloting process is vigorous. It works. Anyone can stop that process of a work item becoming a standard with just a negative, and then we have to work out the negative and move on to the next iteration of the draft standard. What usually comes out in the end is a very, very good product. So we're willing to be accountable, and we want to share. And we're definitely committed to helping our world, asset management, work better. Because if we're not, we shouldn't be doing this at all. So we are committed to that principle by all means. And the other last words, Jessica, I don't know if there's any questions out there, but if you have questions, now would be a good time to ask if you want, or if you even have questions later on. You can see my contact information there. Katerina Koperner is our ASTM staff manager for our committee. There's her email there. If you have questions about becoming a member of the committee, I would say email one of us if you want to become a member so that we can send you the directions. ASTM and all of this wonderfulness and openness and inclusiveness, the process of becoming a member is a little convoluted. So if you're interested in becoming a member, email one of us there so we can provide you with the cheat sheet, so to speak, and going through their membership process and becoming a member of E53. So once again, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate the fact that I can be the chairman of E53 and a cheerleader for ASTM, and I appreciate that you have called in to listen.
Well, Bill, we do have some questions and some comments, so I'm going to try to do this in the order in which things are received. So first of all, Glenda, I am unmuting you because your hand is raised. Do you have a question? Glenda? Okay, I'll take that back. Sometimes we accidentally raise our hand, no problem. Okay, so we have quite a cheerleader on the phone, in our question log here. Kim Donor, thank you for all of wonderful comments. So I have a number of things to share with you, Bill, to announce to the group. So first of all, Kim asked me to kind of remind everyone that the ASTM Committee E53.10 is actually made up of mostly members of the PC or the project committee for ISO 55000, and others are encouraged to join. And also, ASTM is working with federal agencies to open up an option for group membership. I've got two more, and then I'm going to unmute Kim in case she has anything else to say. The number one reason to join ASTM or E53 is that it gives you a voice. So you have the ability to get your voice in on what the standards are going to be that you're complying with. And lastly, it gives you experience points for your CPPM and for consulting fellow for NPMA. So if you're applying for either of those options, it adds a little bonus in there as well. Kim, I'm going to unmute you in case I did not communicate any of that effectively, so you are unmuted, but I really appreciate those additional points. Anything else, Kim? Or is that good? Okay, so I guess we're good there, so I'm going to mute her back. Does anyone else have any questions or comments, or you want to ask anything? Feel free to raise your hand or type it in. I am checking here. Oh, we do have one more. So, one moment. Marlene, I am unmuting you now. Marlene? Bill, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, no, I'm not talking. Okay, so Kim said her mic didn't work, but great job, Bill, so that's really good. I'm not sure what the deal is with the whole mic situation. Marlene might be having an issue. So Marlene, you are unmuted in case you're there. I don't know if your mic is having trouble also. Okay, one more second here if anyone has any questions. All right. Well, Bill, thank you so much for this great presentation. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And thank you to everyone on the call for participating in this really fantastic webinar. Again, please fill out the survey after you close out. We greatly appreciate your feedback. And if you are one of our 2 lucky winners of a t-shirt, then you will be notified shortly this afternoon. So thank you all so much for participating today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.